I made the same mistake in 10 music videos. I f***ed up the color grade. But now, I fixed those beginner mistakes. Let me explain. I upgraded from Premiere Pro to DaVinci, because it's better, right? To fix my color balance, I'll just pull the temperature slider or move the gain wheel. Nope. Okay, what about the contrast? I can just use the contrast slider, right? Or just move the curves. Don't do that. Fine, let's move to the saturation slider. It's there. Surely I can just... Alright, so let's start with the tutorial. We will be looking at the different frames. Some are outside, in the morning, and inside. Before we jump into the grading, we have to take a look at project settings. If you're going to start grading without proper project settings, the export is going to look different from the preview you have in the DaVinci. And chances are that you are grading in the wrong color space. So let's take a look at project settings. You can open them here and go to color management. Color science, I have this DaVinci YRGB. Timeline color space, set it to intermediate, DaVinci intermediate. This is very important because if you're grading inside color space like Rec 709, you cannot be as flexible as you can be in DaVinci intermediate. Output color space, this one is also very important. Because I'm grading on a MacBook, I set this to Rec 709 Scene, or you can set it to Rec 709A. But if you're grading on a standard monitor that is not MacBook, I recommend that you put this to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. So output color space really depends on what you're actually color grading. Another tip, if you're on the Mac, go to DaVinci Resolve, go into the Preferences, General, and see if you have this one and this one enabled. As you remember before, I said that I'm using Rec 709 Scene, so click Save and you will have to restart your DaVinci, so make sure that you do that. Alright, let's move to the color page. I'm going to create 6 different notes. First thing, we're going to create a sandwich. This is going to be our in and this is going to be our out. So let's rename this actually to in CST because we're going to be adding color transform, and let's rename this one to out CST, like that. On the first one, let's drop color space transform. So here we're actually telling the DaVinci in what color space we want to grade, and this was shot on Sony FX3. So input color space is going to be the Sony S-Gamma 3, and input gamma I'm going to use S-Log 3. For the output color space, we want to use DaVinci Wide Gamut because it's the most flexible. So let's use DaVinci Wide Gamut, and output gamma, we want to use DaVinci Intermediate. In the first note, I set the tone mapping to none and none here, and I leave this as is. So now we set the color space to Sony and the output color space to DaVinci Wide Gamut. So these 5 nodes are inside DaVinci Wide Gamut, which means we have to convert from DaVinci Wide Gamut to Rec 709 because we cannot deliver the final product in DaVinci Wide Gamut. So the input color space is DaVinci Wide Gamut and input gamma is DaVinci Intermediate. So the output color space is going to be Rec 709 and output gamma is going to be Rec 709A in my case. Rec 709A. As we already know, I'm grading on a MacBook, and if you're not on a MacBook or Apple device and you have a standard monitor, set this one to Gamma 2.4. Right now, we're watching the Rec 709 image. So this is the image that I saw on my monitor, right? The Rec 709. And now let's move to the nodes inside the sandwich. So let's rename them. This one is going to be exposure, white balance, contrast, and this one is going to be HSV sat. HSV saturation, actually. Why in this order? Because exposure, white balance, and contrast, those are very important on how much saturation we get out of the image. So before I knew all the tricks, I went into the saturation node and just crank up the saturation slider. But actually there is a much better way and more controllable way to add the saturation. But first, let's go to exposure. I always set my exposure in HDR wheels because they're in linear space and they'll act a lot more as if I were setting the exposure inside the camera. So I'm just going to pull up the exposure a little bit. I'm watching my scopes here. Alright, so let's move to the white balance. Normally, what I will do is just move the temperature slider, like something like that. Or I will go to leave gamma gain and just move the wheels here. Let's add a little bit more blue and let's pull down the reds a little bit. And in this case, it's okay to do that. But when we have the image where we really have to get rid of the reds or the green or the blue, like when we have to push a lot more, there is actually a better way and a faster way. Let's go to white balance, gamma, and set it to linear. And after we set it to linear, pull the lumen mix to 0. And after that, you can set the color balance with the gain wheel. So right now, everything is happening more in a photometric space. So it's a lot more like if we were setting the settings in camera. So let's move the gain wheel. Let's just move it a little bit more into the blue. Maybe add a little bit more green. Let's open the vector scope. And as we can see, if I do the before and after, we moved the whole image more into the center, from this to this. And with that, we created a lot more saturation because we moved everything more into its place, right? Let's look at the whites. They're a lot more clean. The same is happening with his shirt. Let's look at the jeans. See this gonky yellow? And with the color balance, everything is more saturated. Same with the trees. Look at the concrete. The floor, it's night and day. Every color is just pushed more on the place where it needs to be. So when we're pushing the colors in the right place, we are already adding the saturation without touching the saturation slider at all. I really like how clean results you can get with this. And of course, you can get the similar results with leave gamma gain or temperature slider, but for me, this is a lot easier. By the way, I'm focusing on the practical workflow here to get you moving fast. If you want to deep dive into the technical math behind these specific nodes, I've linked some fantastic in-depth tutorials from other creators in the description below. So let's move on to the contrast. It's okay to use the contrast slider, but because we are in the DaVinci Intermediate, you have to set the pivot point to 336. Again, if you want to dig deeper, why this number? Link in the description. Now we can use the contrast slider, or the way I do it, we can use the curves. But again, there's a catch. Let's just move curves like something like this, and something like this. So if the image looks good, it's okay, right? But there's a catch actually, because when we are pulling this, we don't know where the 18% gray lives. Let's go one step back. Let's add another node. And with this node, I'm going to add DCTL. I'm going to plunk it on. So what are we looking at right now? This is the 18% gray. This is a plugin from a creator that I don't really know which one. I'm going to link it in the description or just Google it. You can get one for free. So we have this on this node, just DCTL. Let's go back to the contrast here. Let's click on. And we see that we also have this spike here, right? So let's just add a point right here. We added a point. Let's go back to the DCTL node and delete it. Now let's go back to the contrast node. And as we can see, we have this point right here. This is very important. This point here represents the 18% gray that we set earlier. And now we can move this and we can move this like something like that. All right, so why is this point so important? Because when you set the exposure and you're happy with your exposure, you're going to move your exposure if you don't set the middle gray. So if I move this up and down, I'm going to actually move the exposure as well. Let's say that the client sends you the image and you don't set the 80% gray. And the DP set the exposure to a specific look. And if you don't set the 18% gray, you're actually moving his exposure from the camera up and down. So this is the way that I do the contrast. Let's just pull it a little bit down. Let's look at the vector scope. Do you see how much color we introduced? Do you see how we pushed everything more in the middle? Vector scope is a strong scope when you're doing the white balance and the contrast. But let's say that we want to add even more saturation. The old way that I was doing it was just cranking this one up, right? Just doing like that. But with doing that, you can break the image much faster. What I suggest instead of pushing the saturation slider is click on the saturation node. Let's right click, go to color space and set it to HSV. After that, go to channels and uncheck channel 1 and channel 3. So we are only working with channel 2, which is a saturation. So now we can go into the primaries and use our gain wheel to push more color into it. And as you can see, it's a lot more subtle without breaking the image. We can just keep on going actually. Of course, I'm also watching the skin tones. Look at the difference in the vector scope. Now that we understand the core, now we can start adding LUTs or plugins that help us get the specific look. So let's say that you added a LUT, and normally you add a LUT here after your Rec 709. So I just created this node, let's call it a LUT, right? And we're going to act like this is our LUT. So as you can see, it's changing our look, right? With LUTs and plugins that change your whole image, that change your look, I suggest that you go with a bit different workflow. So first thing I will do if I'm creating a look with LUTs, CST in, CST out, and then you turn on your LUT. And after that, you go exposure, white balance, contrast, and saturation. And let's just say, okay, I don't like the exposure right now. We can just go back. We can go to white balance. So I hope that you understand by now what I'm trying to show you. I really like this workflow because it's simple and it gets me really good results. I think that these nodes are your core. And when you add a LUT, you exactly know where to go to fix it, to make it a little bit more sharp or better or whatever, right? So yeah, let's move to the next section of the video where I will show you how I achieve a cinematic film look. Now I'll show you how I built my look to go from this to this. Or if we look at this frame, from this to this, or from this to this. I'm not using LUTs, I'm using a plugin called Dehancer. Just heads up, while the team at Dehancer gave me access to their plugin, this video is not sponsored. I can still say whatever I want about the plugin. It's just the fact that I really like it. The results are great. If you want to try it yourself, you can use my code Tomaz10 for 10% off. I'm also dropping a dedicated deep dive into Dehancer in a week or two, so subscribe for that. Or if you're watching this later, it's probably already out. Just check the description below. I'm going to just briefly show you how I use Dehancer and how important it is for me to understand those basic nodes in front. First, I choose the film. I really like the Kodak Portra 400, and then I choose the print. For this case, I'm going to use Fujifilm, and with just two settings, look how nice the transformation is. So the first thing I'll do, I'll turn off the Dehancer, and I will just go into the exposure, just set the exposure like we did before. And after that, we're going to be working with white balance. And now I'm going to skip the contrast and the saturation because first I'm going to open up the Dehancer and choose the film and the print. And now that I see where my image is, right, I can see that it's a little bit more in this quadrant. I can go back to white balance, grab the blue and pull it back. And I can go back in the Dehancer and go into the film developer. Let's just add more saturation. So the color boost here in Film Developer is similar to HSV saturation. And let's add the film compression. This is very powerful. So if we take a look at the clouds, at the highlights, film compression is actually pulling highlights down. And as you can see, it's adding more color. And let's say that this is somewhere we want to be. Let's add some grain. You have a really nice selection of grain here. With the slider, you can really set how much grain you want. I like it around here. Halation. I'll normally use this one because it's the most subtle, and even I pull it back a little bit. And with the bloom, again, you have a really nice selection. I choose this one and just pull it back a little bit so you can see what this is doing. If we take a look at the waveform now, we see that we are a little bit red. We can go back here and just move the white balance here and just introduce a little bit more blue. And just like that, as you can see, really, really, really nice look. So let's move to this frame. As you can see, the sandwich, exposure, white balance, contrast, HEV saturation, and the Dehancer, bam. And if you remember before, I was saying that it's very important that you expose the picture correctly. Here's a perfect example. Just look at the highlights. And when we pull down everything, look how much color we introduce. I'm getting this with the help of a film compression inside the Dehancer. It's a very powerful tool here, but you can actually, if you just pull the highlights down, see? Look at the color. No color, color. But yeah, because I have Dehancer, I do this with film compression. Just beautiful, right? Just beautiful. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I just wanted to demonstrate how important it is to nail the basic notes and to use the white balance, contrast, and exposure correctly, because I believe only then you can go to LUTs and start messing with LUTs and with plugins like Dehancer. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and see you in a bit. Bye.